It's definitely about just being heavy and beautiful, if that makes sense.
We weren't looking back when we were writing. We were looking forward 100% of the time.
Okay, everybody, welcome to this Prog chat. I'm excited to have two members of Lesotho from Boston. They are a post-metal instrumental act. And I was just checking out some of their music. They have a brand new album that just came out last week, Through the Dying Light. It came out April 7th. I just heard the first couple songs so far. I'm really enjoying it. It says this is your first full album. So that means you had an EP before this?
Yes. Yeah, we had an EP called Summer Wars that came out in 2020, I believe.
And how has the music changed since then? How has the band progressed?
In a lot of different ways. Maybe Cliff can talk on that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, our songwriting definitely, I mean, with the idea that we were going to do something that was a lot longer than our original 4-song EP, which was like, I think like 25-ish minutes worth of music. We essentially just wanted to kind of give ourselves no bounds when it came to writing. And I definitely think we opened up a little bit and explored a little bit of like the sound that we kind of established and just evolved it. Honestly, I think we definitely reached a goal of having the music be really visual, because that's really big for us. So that was a thing, that was sort of an idea that we put into the writing process, was to make it visual and to kind of extend upon what we did with the EP.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean by make it visual?
Well, for me, at least personally, I can only speak for this myself. I'm sure Kyle probably agrees to a certain degree. Like, because our music doesn't really have vocals, for me, it's important when we're building that atmosphere, when we're writing and composing these songs, to really kind of not necessarily conjure a specific image, but get you to feel something to where you can visualize something, whether it's an emotion or feeling, an idea or concept. It's something that we really want you to kind of fall into.
I think Cliff works a lot with the visual side of things too. He's always helping us get like art together and like make sure our socials are correct and like just displaying the band's sort of image in a way. So I think that follows into the music as well, like especially with how we write together. It ends up being like a very visual process about how we like compose the songs, and he has a lot of say in like what goes into how we structure the song and the different elements that sort of line up, whether it's like a high voice lead with the rumbling bass, like holding down the midsection, and then drums sort of layered over the top. I think we think about things in a very visual way, especially when composing and songwriting too. So it sort of bleeds into both areas, both like promotional wise, artistically, visually, and that leaks into the sound writing as well, the songwriting.
So I guess the next logical question is, why instrumental? Why have you decided to go that route without a singer?
I think it was natural at the time and something that we all really appreciate. We all are big fans of instrumental bands, so it was kind of like a no-brainer for us to just dive head, and heels into vocalist compositions. And I think especially how we were writing, we weren't looking back when we were writing. We were looking forward 100% of the time. There is no real chorus. There really is no real verse. And that was apparent on our first EP. And I think we drove it home in this full length, big time.
What about the recording process? Let's say, right down to the starting, coming up with an idea for a song. How does that process look?
A lot happens. I typically like write some parts here in my like little home studio, and we'll workshop stuff in practice a lot of the time. So we'll have ideas come up from like months ago that we like bring back and put, into a song that we have like the beginning and end of, or we could start with the ending. And it's really this like soup of creative ideas together when we get all together, We're really trying to make things work and like work the best way for us and something that we're excited about. And when we hit on it together, I could bring them apart and I could be like, here's this guitar idea or whatever. And then we could extrapolate on that together and end up writing like three parts after that in succession, which all end up being really nice together, or it could be a much choppier process where we're sticking things and moving things and just trying to figure out the best flow for like us and how we want to sound live and in the studio. When we get to the studio, I mean, I think Cliff can talk on that. We've had a lot of different experiences, like just figuring out how the songs were going to be laid down and what we were going to add to them, making them
Yeah,
perfect because we're all neurotic perfectionists, I think, in our own way. So,
yeah, I would definitely agree with the studio portion of that. I mean, it would come down to even just single the way that we would stroke the strings, playing a certain chord or certain things like that, um, and making those mental bookmarks, if you will, for what we would want to achieve sonically, like in a live setting versus a studio setting where there's more control over things and depth and layers that we can add, that might not necessarily be a part of the live element. So I think taking that process of kind of extrapolating ideas from each other, composing something, and then bringing that to somewhere where we can enhance it. Shout out to our engineer, Alex, by the way. Alex Allenson, the Bridge Sound and Stage, made us sound amazing on this record. Also, shout out
yeah,
to
he's
Mark
the man.
as well for his job mastering. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But taking those ideas to the studio and essentially bringing them there to evolve them, for me was really, really gratifying. And I feel like that it's just the cherry on top of the cake.
Yeah, it's super fun. I think like I write a lot with simple melodies, like I really try to find like a hooky, catchy melody and then write around that a lot of the time. So we always have this lead like kind of vocal line, if you will, to work off
Your
of.
stars are the vocals,
Yeah,
essentially.
totally,
That's
right?
at least how my mind operates
Me
when we're
too.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's wicked fun when we get to the studio and we can start like a lot of the times I'll write like a melody line like that, and that will be the inspiration for the song, you know what I mean? To like pull everything through and drive it on forward. But along the lines of playing it live and practicing it at the space and then finally going to record it, I figure out other ways to either voice it or add an accompanying melody along with it, or a guitar part or whatever, another bass, like lower register melody or something like that, or a higher register melody. And you can really hear that on Truth. So it ends up like pulling all these other parts. And then when we finally get to the studio, like with Truth, I was able to record that first guitar part in the intro and then transition to a higher sort of accompaniment to that. And the whole thing just ended up being like really, and then actually that spun off into a third one where Phil was able to join us on lap steel, which is like, that guitar that you hear in a lot of folk rock and stuff like that and country. He was able to pull in a lot of cool melodies and like shimmer things, and just so much comes out, even in one like 2 minute part, it could be really full, which is exciting for us.
Are you all in the same neighborhood? Like, what is it like for you guys to get together and rehearse?
Yeah, we all live, I think, well, Zach, the drummer Zach and I live closer to each other, but we're all essentially within like an hour-ish of each other, and we
Uh,
meet in a centralized area. Usually, a few times a month if we can, and slowly just compose over time and argue and come up with
uh,
different things and again make those mental bookmarks and come back and revisit something that we may have done. It's cool. I feel like New England, there's something about New England that like I don't know, that gravitates towards that process for me.
huh. So, how is it that you ended up sort of into this genre, this post-metal kind of feel? Is that something that is a surprise to you now that you ended up kind of being here, or was this a logical course of events that you all kind of ended up toward this kind of music?
For me personally, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I've been into various flavors of heavy, and for me, this outlet in particular definitely allows me to be heavy and also beautiful at the same time versus like say a grind band or a death metal band, which there are many of those that I love, but then there are also some post rock bands like ones that we've referenced before like Caspian and Isis and wonderful local band called Glacier. So there's definitely a thriving scene here that I think, for me personally, tends to elicit that from me creatively. So for me, it's definitely about just being heavy and beautiful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I come from more the post-rock side of things, and I've always loved that style. So, dip like leaning into post-metal was something that I was I think would fit for like all three of us together. You know what I mean? So writing on that, leaning on that post-metal side a little bit more for me was kind of something that I enjoy doing just because of the three of us being together and like all of our different influences made sense to be a post-metal band, you know, especially with like, you know, Cliff being like literally in a sludge band, Zach being into hardcore, like, you know, and playing in hardcore bands. And then I was in previous post-rock bands. It's like one plus one, you know what I mean? It just ends up summing to a post-metal kind of feeling and project. And that's, I think, where all the ebbs and flows come from in our music and all this peaks and valleys to end up coming out on like the post-rock kind of thing. Yeah, it just lends itself well.
Who actually started the band? Was it one of you putting up an ad on Craigslist or something, or how did it all begin?
Surprisingly technology free in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
which is weird nowadays. Um, Cliff and I met randomly through one of our friends that we knew mutually. He's a really great bassist, and we just went to jam with him both at the same time. We jammed a couple times, and we ended up just sticking together and trying to do like a post metal kind of thing, and went through a year and a half or 2 years of doing that, and finally found Zach at the same practice space that we were going to, and just clicked. I think he heard us practicing together without drums, and then we were like, "Yo, do you want to come play drums for us?" It doesn't. It was very loose, you know. It was like he could have showed up the next time or not, you know. But he stuck with us and we're still going strong.
Cool, cool. Have you played out live with your setup as it is right now? And how often do you guys get out?
Oh yeah, we've played quite a few times, and we do try to get out at least somewhere in our region of New England, monthly, every 6 weeks. That we've pretty much been doing that since the year began, leading up to this album release, which just happened last week. We actually do have a show this weekend, which is kind of a quasi album release show, with the Sound That Ends Creation, Sunflower, friends of ours, Karate Steve and Lotus Eater Machine, at a venue in Lowell, northern Massachusetts, to kind of tie everything together. And Sunflower and the Sound are on tour right now. They've been doing like a nationwide thing, so we're helping them as on this leg. We also do have the album release show for some friends of ours, Widower, formerly known as Harbor Lights. That will also be a local show. But we do try to get out as we can. We all have full-time jobs, and I have a child as well. So, you know, we definitely do have to kind of fit it in when we can. But at the same time, we want to pour more into it now, especially with this record sort of being a lot bigger than we thought it was going to be, for sure.
I noticed on your website you were going to be releasing a cassette, which I think is totally cool because I've even got an 8-track. I've got a couple of decks for cassettes. I got CD player, record player.
That's really cool. Like I've only ever seen an 8-track player in a car. I've never actually seen a standalone in person, at least.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a few out there. So you're going to release a cassette.
We are releasing a cassette. It's going to be super limited, only because we were only able to get a certain amount made from the manufacturer. But we have we're going to be bundling that with some T-shirts, and we're going to have some online exclusive merch that we're going to be putting out. So people can definitely wrap that up. I think we may be looking into vinyl in the future as well. Shout out to Jack Hillside for their amazing artwork on the album as well. They're a French collective of artists from Bordeaux, and they have helped us artistically kind of put together this record, referring back to the visual thing I mentioned earlier. So shout out to them. A lot of the imagery on this record is going to look cool. And I think a cassette, for me personally, it's actually not my favorite way of listening per se. But I think it's a cool little trinket to have. Obviously, you will put download codes with it, and you'll be able to listen online and what have you. But we are looking forward to kind of sharing that with people and having that be like a cool little thing that they can share as part of this record with us.
Excellent. This genre, post metal, is it similar to, or how similar would you say it is to black glaze? You know, that kind of the shoegaze versions of black metal or whatever. Is there some bleeding back and forth between the genres, or do you not think too much about genres?
I don't think too much about it, honestly, because it's not something that I'm not thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna write a black gaze part. It's really about like what can I do to make this song the best that it can be, or like whatever I have an idea of, or whatever the input will be, whether it's all of us coming together being like, we want something thrashy here. I don't think in genre very much, and it's really just what ends up coming out, and we can distill into our own sound, like day to day, whatever anybody wants to slap a label on it, be like, that's gaze, that's post metal, that's straight up post rock, and you sound like this, you sound like that. That's all cool. Like it's all tangentially related, which is really awesome in the end. And similar to our song names and our label names, there's a lot of speculation that can go into it.
Yeah,
Which we love. We love that side of things. So,
for me, it's like, what is black gaze, right? Like we have
yeah.
some parts that could sound like black metal. We have some parts that might sound like shoegaze. So people call it black gaze. I guess we can call it black gaze.
Yeah.
But I agree with Kyle. It's just kind of whatever comes out when we're together in the same room. It's a lot of the crossover of our interests and our background and kind of honing in on that. And that is what we are.
In Boston, where you are, for example, like what's the music scene like, even in the broader United States area there? How does the music scene feel down there?
Good. A lot better than a lot of other places, I imagine. I think it's up there. And what we do, we get a lot of support from people from Boston, and they like to show, like, I think the pride of this type of music, that it's strong and listened to and cared about. And we have really interesting shows pop up. A lot of people seem to like want to hit Boston on their tours. See all types of music roll through here, which is always great. I think that's always kind of been the case in Boston now. It's been a pretty popular place for musicians to come tour, for a lot of bands to pop up out of.
Yeah, the music community around here is pretty cool, I would say. Not just Boston, but all of New England, particularly for heavy music and all those different flavors I was talking about earlier. I think there's definitely a resurgent sort of a posty scene that's on the rise here, with a lot of like grunge influence stuff that's still on the edgier, heavy side. But then there's also a bunch of really cool like stoner doom bands, really cool sludge bands. All from this area, like Barishi, Cazador, Glacier, a whole bunch of cooler bands from the other side of Massachusetts, opposite from we are as well. Western Mass, Lich King, Goblet. There's so many I could just name drop right now, but as just by virtue of being able to do that, I think that tells you, how fruitful it is, especially after the pandemic. I feel like we're definitely on the come up for sure.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everybody watching, I'm putting the links down in the description. You can go to Lesotho's website and check out what the merch they have. And let's talk about gear for a second. I know it's a nerdy thing, but
no, we're all about this.
Okay.
Yeah, we love gear.
Yeah, so go a little bit into each of you, the gear you use a lot, frequently live in the studio, what your favorite amps are and stuff like that, guitars.
Yeah, I've got a Varellin Skyhammer, which is a really great amp. And then that runs into an Emperor 412 that I ordered a couple of years ago. It's beautiful. They're all kind of chassised out in maple and walnut, and it's heavy as hell, but super beautiful to look at, and they sound awesome. I typically run to like, my pedal board. I've got like a bunch of I think my main like looper is like an RC30 and a DL4 I mainly use for looping and like playback. a lot of the ambience I get, like at the end of Dead Calm, our final song, I record that last guitar part and loop it back in the DL4 and double the speed and reverse it to get a lot of that like shimmering and twinkling going on. I use like a Big Sky reverb, Strymon Timeline, and uh, Avalanche Run by Earthquaker. All really great delay and reverb pedals that I think make a lot of my tone and sound and what I can bring to the table, like effects wise. On top of that, I have like what is it, Super Collider fuzz and a plumes, and we just got both of us, Cliff and I, just got the Life pedal by Earthquaker Devices, and man, that thing is a game changer. If anybody hasn't checked it out, I really recommend it. It's like a awesome. It has an octave in it, it has a boost, and it's an
It do
OG. Yeah, it's kind
it
of
do.
doomy, saturated, but it's so cool because you can control it on such a low level, but still get some feedback, and it just sounds really full and awesome. So we've been kind of layering that on top of my amp distortion. So I have like three stages of gain, really. The fuzz being like the ultimate maxed out with all three of them on. And then I play my
The Reverend,
guitar, the
the
Reverend.
Rev.
Reverend. I got a
Oh yeah.
charger that it's awesome. I love maple neck guitars, and I got it set up recently, and it just plays like a dream. So I'm not going anywhere far away from that for a long time. And recently, I've been messing around with the Axe Effects unit. One of my buddies lent me his, so I've been kind of getting into like creating all these rigs on my computer and stuff. So hopefully someday I can run everything in stereo, half through the Axe Effects and half through my regular amp, like kind of analog-y setup, to create some more like atmospheric, crazy effects that we could trigger in and trigger out, like through the PA system and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to do that.
It's amazing. It's a real renaissance of guitar effects in the last decade. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, those units are wild. Like they
Yeah.
blew my mind the stuff you could do.
Yeah, likewise for bass, especially for me, because this whole world of signal chains and effects is a relatively new thing for me. I mean, 5 years ago, I couldn't tell you anything about anything when it comes to amps and effects or anything like that. And just picking up on just Kyle's ideas and just learning on my own as I progressed on the instrument. I've definitely I grown an affinity for vintage basses. So live, I like to use my PVT-40, which is I believe, a 79. I also, on the record, for portions of the record, used a Kramer 450B with an aluminum neck, which is heavy as hell, but it
It
was
was sick.
awesome.
Yeah.
Sounded amazing. I have a Sansamp DI, run that into a Green Russian fuzz, best fuzz ever for bass. That Green Russian Pi, Big Muff. In addition to that, like Kyle mentioned, we just got that EQD Life pedal, which is the Sun pedal, Sun the band slash brand, if you will, which is amazing, especially with their low pass filter. With the bass, I essentially have three stages of gain, none of which are like super overwhelming. Especially with our sound, I do try to lean towards the cleaner side, but still have a bit of grit as the bassist, even with those additional digital effects. So I do use actually two reverbs, sometimes in tandem, with a delay as well. A Polymoon delay, Cathedral reverb, and also Blue Sky reverb. And I've got a Ditto and Bit Crusher for when I want to get funky live. And I'm trying to think of other stuff we used at the studio. I mean, I used my synthesizer. We used the Korg.
We used the Pigtronics envelope filter for Crown of Echoes, which created this nice like LFO-y kind of like up and down sort of left and right stereo kind of effects on his bass, which was really neat. That was super fun. So else we used a couple synths and
Yeah. I just realized I didn't
fucking
mention
yeah, Axe
my
effects.
amps.
I bet we
I
used it for the cello and like violin string sort of sounding guitar dubs at the end of a lot of our songs. I think running down the sides, we overdubbed some like cello on guitar. It was really, really gnarly. So it was really cool.
Oh no, I was gonna say like I totally forgot to list. I used a Bassman 300 on the record, best bass tube amp besides an Ampeg that I could actually get my hands on
Yeah.
post pandemic. And live actually use a newer piece of technology. It's basically a shoebox. It's a dark glass Alpha Omega, which is really cool. I actually don't use the amp distortion. It's just a nice tube like solid state that I bring on stage and doesn't hurt my back.
Yeah. That thing's sweet.
So your drummer's not here, and you probably can't make any comments about what he's playing. So we'll have to leave that for another interview, I guess.
Ironically enough, I actually could, because he
Okay.
actually my drum set.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's actually it's a Ludwig Vistalite acrylic, and then we used a combination of K and A series Zildjian cymbals. I believe on the record we used 15-inch K hi-hats, 24-inch K light ride, which is the most crashable kind of all-purpose ride that there can ever be. I believe a 20-inch dark crash. I believe we used a Sabian, some form of Sabian for China. Drum dimensions are 24 by 14 for the kick. I think we have like a 10-inch, one 10-inch rack tom and a 20-inch floor tom. So big boys, one up, one down with the Zildjian plates.
The kit sounded amazing.
Absolutely. The acrylic just pops on the record. It pops live. Wooden kits do have their own character, but I feel like for what we're doing, the acrylic drum set definitely works for sure.
well, so obviously you're a drummer as well, then, eh?
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
actually do play drums in another band, which is of the sludge variety called Cazador. So yes,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I do
Cool.
play and enjoy drums. And actually, as Kyle referenced earlier, when he and I first met, I was originally playing drums and he was on guitar. It wasn't until shortly after we had like sort of mulled over the idea of having Zach join the band that I actually moved over to bass, hence the whole signal chain and effects being new to me.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so my origins of a musician do start on the percussion side, but they have since devolved to the other side of the rhythm section. So pretty cool.
I guess that'll come in handy if your drummer's ever breaks a leg or something. You could kind of fill in for him or something.
Yeah, but then I got to worry about somebody filling in for me, and I'm like, all right, you got to
Yeah.
get all these figures
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Do you think that's more common nowadays, that musicians tend to be sort of, rather than specializing, they're kind of more broad? And
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like if you care enough for the art form, absolutely. I mean, I refer to myself as a musician first and foremost, more than say a drummer or a bassist, if only because I'd imagine that, especially now with technology and how it's evolved and how it's so accessible. I mean, you can literally go onto YouTube and buy a pair of drumsticks and learn rudiments. You know, that's literally all you need, at least in that regard. You know, all you have to do is pick up a bass or a guitar and, you know, look at tabs, or, you know, even buy sheet music and go over it, listen to it, pull it up on your phone. I feel like it's so accessible now that, like, especially with like the younger generation now, I can only imagine like the level of skill that they'll have compared to us, like kind of older millennials / Gen Xers. So,
well, this has been an awesome interview. And is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to mention?
No, if you haven't checked out the album, go check it out. Through the Dying Light. It's available on Bandcamp and anywhere else you can stream or buy music. Yeah, we got a show this Saturday in Lowell. If you're in the area, come check us out. A bunch of awesome bands. And we have a few surprises coming up, including the merch drop soon. So we'll be having bundles available on our Bandcamp with t-shirts, a print, cassette, and all that stuff. So you can pick up at Bandcamp.
yes, and most importantly, thank you for having us, Dean. It was,
Yeah,
you know, we
thank you so
appreciate you
much.
reaching out to us and having us.
Oh,
So,
my pleasure. It's
yeah,
been
cool
nice to meet you
chat.
guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
and I
pleasure.
truly mean it. I love your music. I'm not just saying that. I've only listened to a couple songs so far, so I'm imagining, you know, the rest is going to be in a similar vein. But I really loved it.
That's
You're
great.
saying it has a vision to it. I would agree that it's kind of I always use the word cinematic. Sort of feels like to me like you're in a scene of a film or something. So it has that feeling of something. Personally, I read a lot of science fiction. And do you guys go to science fiction for inspiration, or where does your inspiration come from, would you say?
think we go to a lot of movies. Yeah, totally. Like a lot of fantasy kind of stuff I'm into. I think we all love video games and board games and movies and just all that kind of stuff sort of ends up leading into it a lot. Like
Mhm.
um
All manner
personally.
of media, honestly, like whether it's like, yeah, comic books, books, you know, video games, movies, television, you know, I feel that informs a lot of our sort of process, if you will, like just how we approach it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool, man. Like you should definitely, like, I don't know,
And
read a chapter and like let the music take you. You know,
yeah,
I'm sure your mind's eye will come up with something really cool.
I think it's good reading music. Like you can put it on, and read a book or do something like that, and it'll kind of take you away in a bit. Yeah, I've always wanted to compose for movie and kind of television or short film or something like that. I think we're getting closer to doing that someday, which is exciting.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're employing the French collective artists you were saying, because
Oh hell yeah.
I think that art is really important. There's nothing more disappointing than, well, you know, a really great album, but the art sucks or something, or it's really tacky or whatever.
Yeah.
It's. I'm glad you guys are valuing some good original art, and that's
Yeah.
great.
We I think early on took on the thing of like we want to empower other artists because we love so much of their art, you know, so we want to support them too. So we want to be like a vehicle for those other artists to kind of get their stuff out there, be known and appreciated. And if, you know, we could be a step for them to be like, look at this awesome piece I made, then we love doing it. And same with like video and film and, you know, photos and digital illustrations. We love it all. So whatever we're into, we want to support that the best we can through our art.
Art informing art. That's what we're
Totally.
about.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks again for your time, and I'm grateful to have met you guys, and I learned about your band now, and everybody else. Links down below. Check out the band, support Lesotho, and that's it. Signing off from the Prog Dog channel. Thanks a lot, Cliff. Thanks, Kyle. See
Of
you guys
course.
later. Have a great
Thanks
Thank
show
for
this
having us.
weekend.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Peace
Okay.
out, man.